friend.
January 2025. President Trump establishes a White House faith office and an anti-Christian bias task force. 19 states now have laws restricting which bathroom transgender people can use. 1 in 4 trans Americans live under these restrictions. Louisiana mandates the 10 Commandments displayed in every classroom, kindergarten through college. 652 anti-transgender bills are introduced in state legislatures in 2024. That's the 4th consecutive year of record-breaking numbers. 12 states have banned diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at public universities. There are 6,870 instances of books banned from schools in the 2024-25 school year. 72% of those bans were pushed by organized political groups, not parents. The National Association of Christian Lawmakers now operates in 31 states, pushing what they call biblical legislation through state houses. When did freedom become, you have freedom only if I agree with what you're doing?
Hello, friend.
Hello, friend. Welcome back. Last month in Texas, a teacher was investigated for having a rainbow flag in her classroom. The same month in California, a professor was placed under Title IX investigation for refusing to use a student's pronouns. 2 people, opposite sides of the culture war, both facing consequences from government or institutional power for refusing to comply with the approved orthodoxy. And that begs the question, how did we get here? Because the people who founded this country, they fled exactly this. Governments that told them what to believe, how to worship, what they could read, how they had to live. The founders looked at that history and said, we're not doing this. Government doesn't get to pick winners and losers in the marketplace of ideas. But somewhere between 1776 and now, we decided that was quaint, naive, that freedom actually means freedom for the things I approve of, restrictions for the things I don't. And both sides have done it. Over the past 250 years, both left and right have systematically abandoned the principle that freedom means tolerating what you disagree with. But right now, in 2025, one side has all the power, and they're using it. So let me walk you through how we got here, because I think we need to understand what we're building and what happens when the other side gets the same tools. Why we came here and what we decided. The Puritans fled England because the Anglican Church was persecuting them. Catholics fled Protestant persecution. Quakers, Presbyterians, Baptists, different groups fleeing different religious oppression in Europe. They came here for religious freedom. But here's the irony that should have warned us about human nature. The Puritans got to Massachusetts and immediately banned Catholics, Quakers, and anyone who wasn't a Puritan from the colony. They fled persecution and then persecuted others. the pattern was already there. So by the time we get to the founding of the country, the Continental Congress looked at this mess and generally agreed. Forcing the public to worship beneath a state-run church went against everything they were trying to build. And they put that in writing. 1791, the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech. That seems pretty clear. But let me give you my favorite founding document, because nobody talks about this one. 1797, the Treaty of Tripoli. This wasn't some fringe document. It was ratified unanimously by the U.S. Senate and signed by the president. And Article 11 says this, I'm quoting directly. As the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, it has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of Muslims. Not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. Unanimously ratified. 6 years after the First Amendment. In 1802, Thomas Jefferson writes to the Danbury Baptists about, quote, a wall of separation between church and state, saying, religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God. The founders weren't subtle about this. They looked at European religious wars, at state churches persecuting minorities, at governments enforcing orthodoxy, and they said, we're not doing that here. Government doesn't pick a side. You can believe what you want. You can say what you want. You can live how you want. And we tolerate, not necessarily approve of, but tolerate what we disagree with. That was the deal. So what happened? How we got here now starts a little before. So here's the thing about the 1950s. It wasn't just religious conformity. It was conformity. Period. The Cold War was heightening. Godless communism as the enemy. And America responds with a package deal. Under God gets added to the pledge. In God we trust replaces E pluribus unum as the national motto. Oh, and McCarthyism and loyalty oaths for federal employees. And teachers getting fired as subversive. If you express liberal or left-leaning views, you could lose your job. Not because you did anything illegal, but because your ideas were deemed dangerous. Sound familiar? 1962, the Supreme Court rules school-sponsored prayer violates the Establishment Clause. 79% of Americans disapprove. 15 states refuse to comply. That backlash matters. It wasn't just about prayer. It was about government being told it couldn't impose religious practice, and a lot of Americans didn't like that. Now, here's where it starts to get really interesting. The 1970s, we saw Roe v. Wade happen in 1973. But evangelical Christians mostly didn't care. The Southern Baptist Convention passed resolutions calling for legalization of abortion in 1971, 74, and 76. Many evangelicals supported it as religious liberty and limited government. The religious right mobilization came later, 1979, 6 years after Roe. Francis Schaeffer and C. Everett Koop launched a 20-city anti-abortion tour. Koop later called it, quote, the first time most Christians ever knew what the issue was. That same year, Jerry Falwell founds the Moral Majority. Its goal, make the religious right a permanent political force. In 1989, Falwell disbands the Moral Majority in Las Vegas, declaring, quote, our goal has been achieved. The religious right is solidly in place, and religious conservatives in America are now in for the duration. He was right. The pattern accelerates through the 2000s and 2010s. LGBTQ rights versus religious freedom. Schools as the battleground, sex education, evolution, history standards, what gets taught and what doesn't. In 2009, Pew Research documents a clash of rights between gay marriage advocates and religious freedom defenders. 2015, the Supreme Court legalizes same-sex marriage. Many states respond by passing religious freedom laws targeting sexuality and gender. 2017, in just 6 months, 93 anti-LGBT bills debated in state legislatures, 42 of them based on religious exemption laws. And both sides are using the same playbook by now. Universities require diversity statements for hiring. There's campus speech codes. We attempt to deplatform speakers. Mandatory DEI training. The pattern is identical. Use whatever power you have to enforce compliance with your approved beliefs and restrict the beliefs you oppose. The right is currently using legislative power. The left using institutional power. Ultimately, it's the same mechanism. And then we get to 2020 through today. August 2020, the National Association of Christian Lawmakers is founded. By 2025, they have members in 31 states pushing what they call biblical legislation. 2023, 615 anti-trans bills introduced into state legislature. 2024, 652 bills, the fourth consecutive year of record-breaking numbers. Also in 2024, 6,870 instances of book bans. That's 19 books removed from American schools every single day of the school year. 29% of which target LGBTQ content. 36% target books featuring people of color. And again, 72% of that was pushed by organized groups, not parents. 2024 saw a record 164 campus deplatforming attempts, 73% of which were related to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Louisiana passed a law requiring 10 commandments displayed in every public school classroom. By mid-2025, 19 states have laws restricting which bathroom transgender people can use. That's 25% of the trans population. 12 states have banned DEI programs at public universities. Republicans control the White House, the Senate, the House, and have a 6-3 conservative majority on the Supreme Court. They control 27 state legislatures with full control, governorship, and both chambers. This isn't speculation about what might happen. This is what is happening. Almost 6,900 book bans in one school year, 19 books every single day. That's not concerned parents. That's organized political pressure groups with target lists working through school boards across the country, deciding what all parents' children can read. 19 states telling you which bathroom you're allowed to use based on what's on your birth certificate. Government making it illegal for you to use a public bathroom unless you comply with their definition of your gender. Louisiana mandating Christian 10 Commandments in every classroom, not as historical context, as required display. In a state where 3% of its population is Jewish, 1% is Muslim, 8% is religiously unaffiliated. But one version of Christianity gets posted in every classroom by law. The National Association of Christian Lawmakers openly pushing biblical legislation, not legislation informed by Judeo-Christian values. We can have that debate if you want. Explicitly biblical. With model laws they can copy and paste into any state house wherever they have members. A White House faith office, governmental infrastructure dedicated to one religion, in a country whose founders said, we are, quote, not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. Now, if you're conservative, if you're Christian, if you voted for this, you might be sitting there thinking, finally someone's pushing back against the secular left, against the gender ideology, against the erosion of traditional values. It's about time. And I get it. I understand your frustration. I understand feeling like your values have been under attack, like institutions have been captured by progressive ideology, like you've been told to sit down and accept things you fundamentally disagree with. But here's my question for you. What happens when power changes hands? Because it will. We've talked about it before. That's how this works. Republicans won't control the White House, Congress, and the courts forever. At some point, could be 2 years, could be 10, Democrats will have the same level of control that you have right now. And when they do, they'll have all these tools you're building. Remember that list I opened with? Trump's White House faith office, 652 anti-trans bills, 12 states banning DEI, Louisiana's 10 Commandments, the book bans. Every one of those sets a precedent. And precedents don't care which party uses them. You're setting the precedent that government can tell you what religious displays are mandatory. You're setting the precedent that government can decide which books are too dangerous for anyone to read. You're setting the precedent that government can regulate bathroom use based on identity. You're setting the precedent that government can require ideological statements for employment. You're setting the precedent that government can establish a faith office. You think you're protecting Christian values. You're actually building the weapon that will be used against you. Because when Democrats control all three branches again, they're going to look at the precedents you set and say, great, now it's our turn. Mandatory displays of progressive values in classrooms. You set that precedent with the 10 Commandments. Restricted bathroom access, unrestricted bathroom access. All of it based on government-approved identity. You built that mechanism. Required ideological statements for public employment. You opened that door when you started banning DEI statements, because banning ideological requirements is just another way of imposing ideological requirements. The founders understood something we seem to have forgotten. They didn't create freedom of religion because they loved every religion. They created it because they knew government-imposed religion, any religion, becomes tyranny the moment the wrong people gain power. They didn't create free speech because they loved offensive speech. They created it because they knew government deciding which ideas are acceptable becomes tyranny the moment your ideas become unacceptable. They didn't separate church and state because they were hostile to Christianity. They did it because they studied history and saw what happens when government and religion merge. It corrupts both, and it persecutes everyone who doesn't conform. Freedom isn't supposed to be conditional. It's not supposed to mean freedom for my religion, but not yours. Free speech for ideas I agree with, but not ideas I oppose. Personal liberty for lifestyles I approve of, but not lifestyles I don't. The whole point, the entire purpose of constitutional freedom is that it protects things you disagree with, things you find offensive, things you think are wrong, because that's the only freedom that protects any of us when power changes hands. But we've decided that's too risky. It's too permissive. That tolerating things we disapprove of is the same as approving of them. So we use whatever power we have, legislative, institutional, cultural, to restrict the freedoms we don't like and protect the freedoms we do. And both sides have done it. I'm not letting the left off the hook. When they had institutional power, they used it the same way. Mandatory diversity statements, speech codes, deplatforming, same playbook, compliance or consequences. But right now, today, it's not the left with legislative and executive power, it's the right. And the precedents are being set, the mechanisms are being built. They don't care which party uses them. So here's what I keep coming back to. When you accept government telling you what to believe and how to live, when you celebrate it because right now it aligns with your beliefs and your way of living, you're not protecting freedom. You're destroying the only thing that protects any of us. Because freedom was supposed to be unbiased, nonpartisan, agnostic, objective, not dictated by your Bible, anyone's Bible, literal or metaphorical. And I'm serious about that. I'm not using Bible as a cheap shot at Christianity. I'm saying the left has their secular Bible too, their orthodoxies, their untouchable principles, their list of beliefs you must affirm or be cast out. Both sides have decided their version of the truth is so important, so fundamental that it justifies using government force to impose it. But that's not what the founders set up. They didn't say freedom for Christians. They said not founded on the Christian religion. They didn't say free speech for acceptable ideas. They said Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. They created a system that was supposed to tolerate, not approve of, but tolerate profound disagreement. Because the alternative was governments enforcing orthodoxy. And they'd seen what that looked like. So when did we decide it was acceptable? When did we decide that using government power to enforce our beliefs and restrict opposing beliefs was fine as long as it's our team doing it? When did freedom become, you have freedom only if I agree with what you're doing? And what are we going to say when power changes hands And the other side uses the same playbook that we're using right now. Because it will change hands. It always does. And the precedents we're setting today, the mechanisms we're building, the power we're concentrating, that's permanent. Even when our control of it isn't. We're building the cage we'll eventually find ourselves in. And I don't know if we'll even remember it was us who built it. Now get off my lawn.
Hello, friend.